Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I'm having more questions and answers, and I have found some of the greatest questions. You guys are so smart and intelligent, and what I want to do here is help everyone better understand Vedic astrology. So here goes. I'm going to continue on with some of these amazing questions and give you what I feel from my wisdom is the answer. So question is from Lightburner. How can you see that marriage is canceled, not delayed, just totally canceled? It's never going to happen. So when I'm looking at a chart for marriage, I'm always looking at the transits, like when people will get married, because people want to know when they're going to get married for the most part, when they're going to meet that special person, how is their life going to evolve from that point on. So it's funny because sometimes I find charts where things just never line up to create that special time frame. So I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe this is an example of somebody that is not meant to ever get married, because while Jupiter should be aspecting the 7th house, it's the only thing. It's not aligned with the ruler of the 7th. It's not aligned with the moon. It's not aligned with the 7th house from the moon. You kind of need all of these variables to come together for the prediction. Venus transiting the 7th house or aspecting it. So when you get 3 or more of these major aspects, aspecting the 7th house, the ruler of the 7th house, or the 5th house. The 5th house is love and romance, dating, whereas the 7th house is commitment. But I need to see where all of these things, there's a time in their life when it all comes together. And when I see it doesn't come together, sometimes I wonder, is that person just not destined to meet someone? It is possible. I hope that made sense. Now, some people are expecting me just to say there's something in their chart, but there's so many variables in a chart. There's nothing that's black and white. Charts are multidimensional with many layers, because you must look not only from the birth chart, but you have to look at from Chandra Lagna, from the moon, and then you have to assess the Navamsha chart in order to make a good assumption, plus looking at Venus, looking at Jupiter. All of these variables are important. So it is possible that someone's just not meant to get married. But if the will is there, it will happen, because it's even in the chart that the will is that strong. So here's a good question. So Sam wants to know, is the June planet alignment worse than the December 2019? I'm assuming you're talking about the eclipses, because there was a solar eclipse that happened December 26th, and it was ferocious. Remember, I said this is the eclipse of the century. And to answer you, no, the June 21st eclipse doesn't look near as extreme or dangerous. It just doesn't, you know. Mercury's with Rahu and the sun and the moon, but it's with Rahu. It's a Rahu eclipse, not a Ketu eclipse like we had in December, where all the planets came together with Ketu. And Jupiter's not involved anymore. Jupiter, I know we all think of it as a great benefic, but it magnifies things and it can make things worse. You know, when I looked at all the variables that are coming about this year, so many things, and I'll go into greater detail with that. But one thing I noted, I went back in history to the last time that Jupiter was together with Ketu in Sagittarius, exactly conjunct. And I saw all these wonderful things that occurred, such as the discovery of electromagnetic energy and the spiritualist movements. But there was a pandemic that year. Another thing was, and I'll leave you with this, was the year that Adolf Hitler was born. He was born with Jupiter, K2, and Sagittarius, and the moon together, all three things. Go figure. Some people can really abuse some of this energy, but my point is Jupiter can magnify things, okay? So, next question. Okay, so Annette Sutta wants to know what houses and planets should be strong to become an astrologer. Love that. I'll tell you a couple of things that are really pertinent. One of the things is people don't realize the 5th house is the house of astrology. Why? Because it is the house that people give advice. And what an astrologer is sought out for is their advice. They were the advisors to the kings back in the older days. And the 5th house deals with intelligence, guidance, and the mind. And another thing is the 9th house is an important house with astrology because the 9th house deals with spirituality and truth, but it's a different kind of energy than the 5th. But if you consider in Bhavat Bhavam, the 9th house, from the 5th house to the 9th house is the 5th from the 5th. And then if you go to the 5th house, it's the 9th from the 9th. So these are two houses that will be important if you're to go into astrology. And many others say the 8th house because that gives you depth, metaphysical knowledge, and intuition. So I look for those houses, planets that in those houses, such as Mercury, K2, can give deep psychic ability. Jupiter is important as an astrologer. Saturn, of course, a very strong, exalted Saturn will give the ability to give guidance that's grounded and with a lot of wisdom. So there's a lot of things, but also, is it possible to predict a child's chart by looking at the parent's chart? Are there correlations? I always find correlations, but it's not like before the child's born, but once the child is here, you will always see correlations. Many parents have one of their children in their Saturn return. Very interesting. And so therefore, they both have the child will have Saturn in the same place. It's very interesting. I find that to be true. Okay, here's a good question. Julia somebody wants to know, how do you check details about a life partner? And she says, I was told to make the 7th house the ascendant and read the chart. I do that all the time. It's excellent technique. So someone says, tell me about the person I'm supposed to marry. I go right to their 7th house, I make it the ascendant, and I read it as though it were that person's chart. Now, many people may say, well, what if you're married more than once? Well, that's a great question too. But let me remind you, the 7th house is always going to be how you relate to people. But the next thing is the 3rd from the 7th, representing the 9th house. Many say that that's the second marriage. You would make that the 1st house and read it as though it were the second marriage. That partner, everything about them. Such as if you have, let's say you have Jupiter, Rahu, and they're great, exalted in the 8th house. Well, you know what? This can be your partner's money. Why? Because it's a 2nd house from the 7th. So what you're essentially doing with that, to see that there's a very wealthy marriage partner coming about, because you're making the 7th house the 1st house and reading it in its entirety as though it were their chart. Plus, don't forget that when you're looking at this, don't hold back. You can also look at the transiting planets as they evolve through the chart as the 7th house for the partner's experience with how their life is unfolding as well. Also, don't forget the Navamsha is very important to reveal how the relationship and the marriage and that person will be as well. And Venus, Mars are very important in love and marriage as well. And I know in Vedic astrology, it's revered as Jupiter as the marriage partner for the woman, and Venus is the marriage partner for the man. Okay, let's take a couple of more. Okay, Daria Saki wants to know what should we take in consideration when buying a new vehicle? And yes, you're right, Venus does play very important to that, because Venus is vehicles. Venus represents luxury items that are not necessarily necessary. We don't absolutely have to have a car to survive. So, and you know, Venus is like luxury items such as yachts and planes, but it does represent vehicles. So you would look at Venus transiting to the fourth house. The fourth house is also the house of vehicles. So if you have Venus going through the fourth house, that's a great time to buy a car, especially if it's going to be exalted there. And there's also some divisional charts to look at, but that's really stretching it. I did an all-day workshop many years ago where we actually could predict what color the car would be through this divisional chart, through this Shoda Shamsha chart, and it's pretty amazing. But for the most part, look at transits to the fourth house and Venus in terms of buying a car. Okay. Okay, I'm going to use this one because, you know, you all, a lot of this, what you're putting out there is giving me great ideas for more videos. So don't hold back in giving me your ideas, because this next question is, can you have a look at David Icke's birth chart, given that he's been forecasting this for 30 years. And this is Norman Siegel. Well, because of that, I found his time and everything, pulled up his chart, and I'm working on a new book on Uranus. I just published my book on Neptune, just came out, Neptune, Secrets, Illusions, and Scandals. But I thought, well, I wonder if David Icke has some really strange planets with Uranus. And of course, he's got Uranus conjunct the moon in the 9th house. I thought that was astounding because, you know, he is the biggest conspiracy theorist of them all. But you know what? I got to tell you something. After looking at his chart, I think I'm tending to believe more of the stuff he's talking about, because his chart is pretty profound. The guy's got some good information. And maybe he's just not interpreting all of it correctly, because some of it is out there. But who knows? We don't know for sure when it comes to conspiracy theories. But thank you, Norman, because I'm using him in my new book about Uranus. So you gave me that great tidbit to use. Okay. All right, one more. Okay, Raleigh Baraki. I would like to know more about the Age of Aquarius and the things that will change in our world and how each sign can react to these changes. Well, unfortunately, the Age of Aquarius, according to precession, is not due for a really long time. I wish it weren't so. But we are getting closer, because remember this, the starting reference point for Vedic astrology right now is around 6 degrees of Pisces. That's the beginning of the zodiac. Instead of being 0 Aries, that's the beginning that Western astrology uses. So if you take that the zodiac precession is moving 1 degree every 72 years, okay? So 6 times 72, that's how long we have left. What is that, around 430 something years, something like that. So we have a ways to go. But think about the sign Aquarius, think about the sign of Pisces. Pisces is all about belief. And when we started the age of Pisces was 2,000 years ago, which was the advent of Christianity. And all of the religions, actually, all the churches and synagogues and everything became built then. So it's about belief systems, which we're so entrenched in. The age of Aquarius will be I know, and that will be relative to knowingness instead of false, or not false, but we have to believe in something we can't prove. In Aquarius, it will be proven. There will be technology that we can't imagine at that point in time. So it will be an entirely different world. And yes, our charts will be different. It will have moved into the starting reference point being Aquarius. So it will come in, when we come into the age of Aquarius, the zodiac will start at 29 degrees because it's always moving backwards. 29 Aquarius. And it would probably be a great time to reincarnate on the planet. So with that, I'd like to close. We'll have more of these question and answers. These are a lot of fun for me. So I'll close right now. Remember, if you would like to take this a step further and study with me, I have an online university, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. And if you'd like to sign up for my free newsletter or learn more about me, have a consultation, go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Thank you.